The ballroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was 6:15 in the morning, and the chandeliers were still dark. Muhammad Ali sat alone at the head table, a napkin folded in his lap, staring at the empty chairs arranged in neat rows before him. The NAACP Image Awards dinner had ended 9 hours earlier. The guests had gone home. The caterers had packed up, but Ali had returned. He had forgotten his overcoat. The security guard had recognized him and let him wait inside. The lobby had been too cold. The guard said, "Better to wait in the ballroom." Ali had not argued. He had taken his seat at the head table and watched the darkness through the tall windows. A door opened at the far end of the room. A man in a gray work uniform pushed a yellow mop bucket across the threshold. He was 62 years old. His name was Harold Sims. He had cleaned the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles for 19 years, and he had never once spoken to a guest before 7 in the morning. Ali watched him approach. The wheels of the bucket squeaked against the parquet floor. The sound echoed in the empty space. Harold Sims did not look up. He positioned himself near the first row of chairs and began mopping in slow, methodical arcs. His movements were precise. He had done this 10,000 times. His back was bent slightly, the posture of a man who had spent decades leaning over his work. Ali cleared his throat. The janitor kept mopping. "Morning," Ali said. Harold Sims stopped. He looked at the boxer for the first time. His face was difficult to read. He nodded once, a short downward movement of his chin, and returned to his work. The mop made wet sounds against the floor. Ali watched him for another minute. The mop moved back and forth. The water darkened in the bucket. Somewhere in the building, a furnace hummed to life. "I left my coat," Ali said. "They told me it was still here." Harold Sims wrung out the mop. He did not look up. His hands were red from the chemicals in the water. "Lost and found is on the second floor," he said. "Opens at 8. Ali nodded. He did not move from his chair. The ballroom was cold. Outside, the sun was just beginning to lighten the sky over Beverly Hills. The banquet tables had been stripped of their linens. The flower arrangements had been thrown away. What remained was the skeleton of the evening: folding chairs, bare tables, the faint smell of cigarette smoke that had seeped into the curtains. A single champagne cork lay beneath one of the front row chairs, overlooked by the cleanup crew. Ali had given a speech the night before. He had stood at the podium and spoken about black pride, about self-determination, about the future of civil rights in America. The audience had applauded. Photographers had taken pictures. A woman in a sequin dress had asked for his autograph on her program. The mayor had shaken his hand. Now it was just him and the janitor. Harold Sims moved to the second row of chairs. His mop left wet streaks on the floor that caught the gray morning light coming through the windows. "You were here last night," Ali said. It was not a question. The janitor paused. He looked at Ali again, and this time his expression shifted. Something harder came into his eyes. His grip tightened on the mop handle. "I'm here every night," Harold said. "I clean up after every dinner, every award, every celebration. I've been doing it for 19 years. Ali waited. Harold Sims leaned on his mop handle. He was a small man, 5'6", with thinning gray hair and hands roughened by decades of chemical cleaners. He wore a wedding ring that had turned green at the edges. His uniform had his name stitched above, the pocket in red thread. "I heard your speech," Harold said, "through the doors. They don't let us in the room when the guests are here. We wait in the service corridor." Ali said nothing. "You talked about black pride. You talked about standing up for yourself. You talked about how we don't need to bow to the white man, how we need to demand respect." Harold's voice was steady. He was not shouting. He was not emotional. He was stating facts, the way he might describe the weather or the time of day. "I've been bowing for 40 years, Harold said. "To white men, to black men, to every man who walks through those doors wearing a suit that costs more than I make in a month. I bow to all of them. I say yes, sir, and no, sir, and I'll get that cleaned up right away, sir." Ali sat very still. His hands were folded on the table. "My son listened to you," Harold continued. "Back in 67, 68, he listened to everything you said. He cut your interviews out of magazines. He taped your radio addresses. He was 19 years old. He said he wasn't going about a nobody. He said he was going to be like Muhammad Ali. He was going to stand up." Harold wrung out the mop again. The water was almost black now, dirty from the floor. "He joined the Panthers. Did you know that? He read your interviews out loud at the breakfast table. He memorized your speeches. He said if Muhammad Ali could tell the government no, he could tell them no too. He said if Muhammad Ali could refuse to bow, so could he. All his hands were folded in his lap now. He did not move. He did not speak. They killed him in 71, Harold said. The police. In Oakland. He was 23 years old. They shot him 4 times in the chest. Said he was reaching for something. He wasn't reaching for nothing. He was putting his hands up. The words hung in the cold ballroom air. Outside, a car horn sounded faintly on Avenue of the Stars. A delivery truck rumbled past. His name was Marcus, Harold said. Marcus Sims. You never heard of him. Nobody heard of him. He wasn't famous. He didn't have lawyers. He didn't have money. He didn't have bodyguards or managers or people to protect him. He just had your words in his head. Ollie looked at the floor. The wet streaks from the mop were beginning to dry. You stood up there last night, Harold said, and you told all those rich people in their fancy clothes that black people need to fight back. You told them we need to resist. You told them we need to be proud and strong and unbowed. He pointed the mop handle toward the podium where Ollie had stood. The podium was still there, stripped of its microphones, waiting to be wheeled away. And then you left. You went back to your hotel. You went back to your life. And I stayed here to clean up the mess, just like I do every night, just like I've been doing since before my son was born. Harold's voice did not rise. His face did not contort with anger. He spoke with the exhaustion of a man who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time. My son is dead because he listened to men like you. Men who tell young black boys to stand up without telling them what happens when they do. Men who get to be heroes while the rest of us get to be martyrs. Men who give speeches and go home. Ollie sat in silence for a long moment. The mop bucket sat between them like a barrier. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. What was he like? Ollie asked. Harold blinked. The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? Marcus, Ollie said. What was he like? Before, Harold stared at him. His grip on the mop handle loosened slightly. He seemed uncertain how to respond. He fixed things, Harold said after a pause. Radios, clocks, anything with wires. He could take apart a broken television and put it back together better than new. His bedroom looked like an electronics shop. Wires everywhere. Soldering iron on the desk. Ollie nodded slowly. He wanted to be an electrician. Harold continued. He had an apprenticeship lined up with the IBEW, Local 11. He was supposed to start that fall. They had already given him his work boots. The janitor's voice had changed. It was softer now, less guarded. He used to read your interviews out loud at dinner. My wife would tell him to eat his food before it got cold. And he'd say, just listen to this, Mama. Just listen to what the champ says. He had a whole notebook full of things you said. He kept it by his bed. Ollie looked at the older man. The morning light was growing stronger now, casting long shadows across the ballroom floor. Did he look like you? Ollie asked. Harold was quiet for a moment. He set the mop against the wall and reached into his back pocket. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and opened it carefully. The leather was cracked at the fold. Inside was a photograph, creased and faded, of a young man with a wide smile in his father's eyes. He held it out toward Ollie. Ollie stood up from his chair. The chair scraped against the floor. He walked across the damp surface, his shoes leaving faint prints, and took the photograph gently. He looked at it for a long time. He has your forehead, Ollie said quietly, and your eyes. Harold said nothing. His jaw was tight. He looked away toward the windows. I didn't know him, Ollie said. I wish I had. What difference would that make? Harold asked. His voice was thick now, the exhaustion cracking at the edges. Ollie handed the photograph back. His fingers brushed the old man's calloused palm. None, Ollie said. It wouldn't make any difference. Not to what happened. Harold put the wallet back in his pocket. He picked up the mop handle again. His hands were shaking slightly. You don't owe me anything, Harold said. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking for anything from you. I just wanted you to know that your words have weight. They have consequences. Not for you, for us, for the people who don't have what you have, for the people who can't walk away after the speech. Ollie stood still in the middle of the ballroom. The morning light was growing stronger now, filtering through the high windows and catching the dust motes in the air. They drifted slowly, suspended. Do you blame me? Ollie asked. Harold looked at him. The question seemed to surprise him. He considered it for a long moment. I don't know, Harold said. Some days I do. Some days I blame the police. Some days I blame the government. Some days I blame the whole country. Some days I blame God. Some days I blame myself for not stopping him, for not telling him to keep his head down and stay safe. He pushed the mop across the floor again. The motion was mechanical, automatic. Most days I just miss him, Harold said. Most days that's all there is, just missing him. Ollie watched the older man work. The mop made quiet sounds against the floor. The bucket wheels squeaked as Harold moved to the next row of chairs. I have a daughter, Ollie said. Miriam, she's 12. Harold kept mopping. He did not look up. Sometimes I wonder what I'm teaching her, Ollie continued. What she'll remember. What she'll do because of things I said. Whether my words will help her or hurt her. Harold stopped. He straightened his back slowly, pressing a hand to his lower spine, and looked at Ollie. That's the first honest thing you've said, Harold said. Ollie nodded. I don't know what the right thing to say is, Ollie said. I know you didn't ask me to say anything. I know it doesn't matter what I say, but I'm sorry about Marcus. I'm sorry he's gone. I'm sorry you have to clean this floor every morning and remember him while you do it. I'm sorry the world is the way it is. Harold was silent for a long moment. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then he nodded once, lost and found opens at 8. He said again, your coat should still be there. Ollie understood. The conversation was over. He walked toward the door at the far end of the ballroom. His footsteps echoed in the empty space. Behind him, the sound of the mop resumed, rhythmic and steady, the sound of a man doing his job. At the threshold, Ollie stopped. He turned back. Harold Sims was bent over his bucket, wringing out the mop. The water dripped. He did not look up. Ollie stood there for several seconds, watching the old man work. Then he stepped through the door and let it close behind him. The hallway was quiet. A cleaning cart sat abandoned near the elevators. Somewhere on another floor, a vacuum cleaner hummed. The carpet was dark red, patterned with gold diamonds. Ollie walked to the window at the end of the corridor. The sun was coming up over Los Angeles. The city was beginning to wake. Cars were moving on the boulevard below. People were going to work. The sky was turning from gray to pale blue. He stood at the window for a long time, his hands in his pockets. At 7:30, a young woman in a hotel uniform approached him. She was carrying a black wool overcoat. Mr. Ollie, she said. Someone from the event said you might be looking for this. Ollie took the coat. He thanked her. She smiled and walked away, her shoes clicking on the tile floor. He put on the coat and walked toward the elevator. The ballroom doors were visible at the end of the hall. Through the small rectangular windows, he could see the chandeliers had been turned on. The chairs were being stacked by another worker. The floor was almost dry. Harold Sims was not visible from where Ollie stood. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. The doors opened. Ollie stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. The lobby was empty at this hour. A few hotel employees moved quietly behind the front desk. The marble floors gleamed under the morning light. A fountain burbled in the center of the atrium. Ollie walked through the lobby and out through the glass doors. A car was waiting for him at the curb. His driver stood beside it, smoking a cigarette. He dropped it and crushed it with his heel when he saw Ollie approach. Ollie paused before getting in. He looked up at the hotel. 14 floors of windows, most of them still dark. Somewhere up there, a 62-year-old janitor was finishing his shift. In an hour, he would clock out and drive home to a house that was missing a son. He would tell his wife about this morning, or maybe he wouldn't. Ollie got into the car. The driver closed the door and walked around to his seat. Where to, champ? He asked. Ollie did not answer immediately. He was looking out the window at the hotel entrance. Home, he said finally. The car pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic. The hotel grew smaller in the rearview mirror. The sun rose higher over the city. The radio played quietly, a song Ollie did not recognize. Inside the Century Plaza Hotel, Harold Sims finished mopping the ballroom floor. He emptied his bucket into the service sink, stored his supplies in the closet, and walked to the service elevator. He punched his time card at 7:58 a.m. The clock made a satisfying thunk. In the employee locker room. He changed out of his work uniform. He put on a brown jacket that his wife had bought him for Christmas 3 years ago. The zipper stuck, as it always did. He worked it loose and walked out the service entrance and across the parking lot to his 1971 Ford Pinto. The car started on the third try. The engine coughed and settled into a rough idle. The drive home took 45 minutes. Traffic on the 405 was light at this hour. He listened to the news on the radio. A fire in the valley. A robbery in South Central. The weather would be warm today. He lived in Inglewood, in a small house on Eucalyptus Avenue. The paint was peeling on the porch. The lawn needed mowing. His wife was awake when he arrived. She had made coffee and toast. How was work? She asked. Harold sat down at the kitchen table. He looked at his wife. She had the same eyes as Marcus, the same shape, the same color. I met Muhammad Ali, he said. His wife set down her coffee cup. It clinked against the saucer. What did you say to him? She asked. Harold was quiet for a long time. Outside the kitchen window, a mockingbird was singing in the eucalyptus tree. The morning light came through the curtains. I told him about Marcus, Harold said. His wife reached across the table and took his hand. Her fingers were warm. They had been married for 34 years. And what did he say? She asked. Harold looked down at his coffee. The steam rose in thin spirals. He asked what Marcus was like. Harold said. He wanted to know about him. His wife was silent. She squeezed his hand. That's something, she said quietly. Harold nodded. Yeah, he said. I suppose it is. They sat together at the kitchen table as the morning light filled the room. The coffee grew cold. The toast went uneaten. Neither of them moved to clear the dishes. On the wall above the stove hung a framed photograph of a young man with a wide smile. He was holding a radio he had just repaired, wires still dangling from the back. His eyes were bright with pride. Below the photograph, on a small wooden shelf, sat his work boots. They had never been worn. The mockingbird sang. The sun rose higher. The day continued.